No, not that weed. Seaweed. For B12. So here's something funny. It's a rabbit hole of the regenerative world, the fountain of youth, if you will. I grew up in Florida in a retirement community. Everyone's obsessed with health, and I've heard a lot about vitamins off and on throughout my childhood and my teenage years. Never really thought about it much, but lately I'm thinking about it because I'm getting older. Anyways, there's a lot more information now, and there's a lot more ways to troubleshoot and to, let's say, critically think and figure out what the heck is really going on. You know, not just the false representation that used to be in the 80s and 90s about everything, pretty much. But anyways, so this one's about B12, and I think it might be, this is just a guess, it's a hunch, that it might be one of the most important, let's say, vitamins for your body. Because the first thing that happens when you go on a vegetarian diet is they say, well, you're going to feel the effects because you're not going to get the B12. So something has happened with the people's consumption of the meat product where they're now dependent on B12. So that's what's really happened. And so when they leave the meat, depending on, I guess, how much they were a consumer of meat, they're going to feel the effect of the withdrawal, and it may be very severe. This is a guess, okay? So, but I'm experienced, and I can kind of read between the lines just based on things that I've tried and things that have worked and not worked. So anyways, so what I did quickly was, my thought was, is B12 linked to stem cells? Because that's the most important thing in health right now. That's the fountain of youth, is stem cells. So one of these, right off the bat, I found some study showing the role of the B complex vitamins with the promotion of stem cell proliferation. So that's one. And I could have found probably, dozens more legitimate sources, as legitimate as you can get, in this world. But you have to always cross-reference. So another thing I did was I double-checked what's going on with what happens with B12 and regeneration. Well, it enhances nerve repair and blah, 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 blah. So there's a ton of stuff. And where is this from? The National Institute of Health. So some of that stuff's got to be legitimate, because you're seeing information that's in various places that has to be supported by some measure. So anyways, long story short about B12 is apparently it's in some forms of seaweed, which is really interesting, because that was where I left off with the health people in my childhood, was when they were all talking about like algae and the products of the sea, basically, to improve health. So what's happened is pretty clear. The soils that are being used right now are doing something to the absorption process where the plant is growing, and it's causing deficiencies in the plant where it's not actually getting nature's full recipe. This is a theory. So what happens then is it still exists, but it's in strange places. So another thing is that I spoke about the beef, but there's some people that say that the B12 is only in the beef because the animal is fed the B12 as a supplement. They metabolize it, and then you eat that later. So basically they say it's some kind of bacteria, and then it forms some kind of mineral, and it has an actual name. I forgot the name of it. It's like, just look it up. So anyways, B12 might be the thing that will actually help produce, like real health benefit drastically over other things. Thinking of it in terms of like, people want to live forever, people want to live healthier. There's something to B12. you can overdose on this as well, supposedly. But the question is, what variety? So when we're dealing with the modern world, we're dealing with artificiality. And so that's why I actually started this whole rabbit hole journey, because I'm working on my own thing called Earth Diet Ninja Guide. I came up with the idea called Earth Diet. I came up with the idea called Ninja Diet. And that the Earth Diet factor is key here, because it's the reminder basically that we're fed so much stuff now. All people all around the world are fed so much stuff by people who are looking to make money. And they have control over the quality of information. So you have to do your diligence, your due diligence, and research and double check and trial and error. You got to be your own test rabbit, basically, your own test bunny, your own whatever. So, because they're not going to truly provide, really authentic quality information that doesn't have some sort of merchant or, product bias. And when I'm looking at all the information about health on YouTube, I can't fathom how they are allowed to do that. I think it's worse than some of the other bad things, the other provocative things you might see on television, because they're promoting things that I know for a fact don't work, and they don't work very quickly. And I'm not even going to say what they are. But the way the human body has to have the vegetables and the fruits, it has to, 100%. And the fresher you can get them, the better you're going to feel, the more enjoyable experience you're going to be. I'm not a vegetable nut and a fruit nut and all this kind of stuff. But I can tell physically when I have a meal that consists of these things versus when I have a meal that's like that I want, like something loaded with carbs, tons of meat, high in the sugar. That's what I want. Okay, so I know if I want it, it's probably not good for me. So, but that's not a necessary thing. Those kinds of foods, those man-made foods, are not necessary. They're not essential. It's only essential because of the tight situation that we're in the modern world, where we're so dependent on grocers to supply us with so many things. So I'm kind of going on and on about this, but what I wanted to get at is the power of B12, I think, is a key. And when you get older and older and older, you can, or just more experienced, you learn to see between the lines. They call it B12. They have all these ideas of what these things did and what they do, but the information is always evolving, it's always changing, and a lot of it is manipulated, a lot of it is biased. It's a thing that does something in your body that's very important, supposedly. I mean, that could even be not true, but I see it in a lot of strange places. B12 is in semen. What the hell? B12, it's in meat products, but it's also in some obscure, things like seaweeds. But they say it's a different kind of B12. But here's what we have to decide is which kind of B12 is truly the true B12 that people should be eating. Now, going back to the Earth Diet concept, I truly believe that we're going to have to start looking at the animals again, and maybe even going back before they were manipulated animals with the things that we're doing to them, to see how they really acted, because that's our guide. We go by the animals to know where the things are, right? And what to do. We get a concept so we don't make the mistake. If the animal goes and eats a fruit and then he passes out, we know we should probably not try that. This is just a thought. Now, of course, your habitat has developed your body to be more immune to certain kinds of things. And so you're going to have a different reaction based on literally your race, but mostly where your habitat is and where you were born and where your family lineage and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's why, when Americans have high sodium, they become giant cows. Whereas when Asians and Chinese and whatever, they have high sodium, they're the thinnest people, on the earth next to the Indians, who also have high sodium diets. So something's very different, something very different with the habitat and the ways of consumption. Now, if you just simply look at the diets are black and white. They generally consist of more earth diet in the eastern regions, because if you just simply look at the dishes, they're much closer to, to the earth. What they do, like even rice. It's like for everything we do, we got to have flour. Okay, flour is a totally processed made up thing that gets combined with other processed made up things. Whereas they're having just rice. And, it's a totally different thing. So, anyways, this is just a thought on the power of B12. Is it the holy grail, the master key to regenerative health? One of the factors to really seal the deal. Because the other ones are like your vitamin C and some other things, of course. But, what it really comes down to is what produces the repair function in the human body. And it's going to be some process that's fortified, by these little guys that do all this work. Okay, and so we have to be able to cut through all of the red tape and the syntax to see what's truly at the root of it and what it really takes to to make that function in a better, in the most optimal way. And again, I only got involved with this because I can literally see the quality of food is deteriorating before my eyes. In fact, I'm ready to eat seaweed. Oh, and another thing I was going to mention was it's very obvious that, like, if all the nutrients are in dirt and they messed with the dirt because, well, number one, they put all the chemicals, and number two, I mean, where do you think all that crap they spray goes that doesn't hit the plant? So number two, the soil erodes just by default, and then they inject it with fertilizer, but that's not organic. That's going to produce an output, but that's your commercial agro business at play here, which is part of the big issue. So I don't have any of the rights to any of those books I showed or any of those web pages. I just use them for informative purposes, just to share a concept about B12. Bye-bye.